I want to talk to you about 5 points of learning today. What are the 4 forms of learning? And the Zen form of it, we'll address it in the 6th slide, okay? So, learning, we are always asked to learn something when we are students, when we are grown ups, when you're working, etc. etc. We are constantly learning machines as human beings, right? And we're not talking about artificial intelligence here, we are talking ones with consciousness, human beings. Learning. What does learning entail, and what are the 4 forms of learning we really engage with? Okay. So the first one would be learning from people. Okay. What does this mean? Well, since the time we are kids, and even when we grow up and go into workplaces, we are learning from people surrounding us, our colleagues, our co-workers, our teachers, ones who teach us, our professors, our lecturers in college, universities, and so on. So we are learning from diction, we are learning from the voice of other people, we are learning by hearing. We sit there passively as human beings and we learn from a teacher, somebody who's teaching us, giving us diction, giving us course material from the textbooks, and so on. But they are teaching us and we are sitting there absorbing. We're just using our ears and learning. That's one process of learning. That's just one. This is learning from people. Please understand this. This is a distinction I'm making between the 4 steps of learning. These are 4 ways we learn, and we are always living any one of the 4 or a combination of the 4. Think of it that way. It's a combination. It's not one thing only to the exclusion of others. It's always mixed in one form or the other. And you'll see this as we go along. Learning from people means you are listening to people. They themselves are transferring some form of knowledge and understanding, probably even wisdom, to you by their own knowledge. That means they themselves have taken some knowledge from somewhere else, from other people, from their life, from their understanding, from their learning itself. But you are learning from people essentially. So you are learning to a diction, you are learning to a voice, from a voice, and you are associating and learning from that. And in this learning, there are some advantages, because in this learning, not only are you picking up the knowledge, you are picking up the teacher's body language, you are picking up the teacher's energy, you are picking up the energy of your co-workers, for example, if you are in the workplace, of your boss. You're not just listening to the voice, you're listening to everything that the voice contains. It's a very multi-layered kind of learning from people. For example, if somebody at your workplace is teaching you something, you are not only hearing the words, but you are also kind of open and perceptive to the person's emotions and to how the knowledge is being stated. Is it being insisted? Is it being demanded? Or is it being coerced? Or is it being respected? Or is it being requested? You see, many forms of learning can take place all at once. This is because human beings are multidimensional. Number 2. Second form of learning is learning directly from books. The textbooks, your books of religion, your holy textbooks, or whatever text you want to say, the written material. Whatever the written material is there that you come across, it may be fiction, non-fiction, right up to ranging up till spirituality and anywhere in between. You're reading something from a text. How this helps? Well, this form of learning has its own advantages, in the sense, if you're reading a book, any book, your textbook, or your fiction book, or any kind of written material, even a website for that matter, anything that you are reading, you are silently doing an inner work. That means you will be processing silently in your own mind. You don't like disturbances. No one likes disturbances when they are reading something, because your mind is focused on the written text. So you need all the attention span of the mind. The mind is very focused when it is reading something. It's trying to follow something. Mind does not usually drift when it is reading a book. You're reading line by line. You got to follow. You're really in a focused state of mind. That is learning from books. So this has its own advantages, because this kind of learning will give you a focus of the mind which tends to normally drift for all of us. So learning from books will give you not only what the author is trying to convey, but whatever style the author is trying to convey in. So again, it's multi-layered. You find out what the author's bias is, or what they are trying to say, which has a kind of color to it, or their own inherent biases, or what they think is right or wrong, or it should be done like this, or it should be done like that. Even the scientific textbooks, the people who write, it's pretty much dry, right? Because it's a logical, mathematical, analytical kind of reasoning there. So learning from books has its own advantages, but you got to remember this is another kind of learning which has got a very different quality to learning from people, which you saw in the first slide. Third, learning by experience. Now this is very different to the first two, in the sense, if a person doesn't have any access to any university, if a person is let's say alone in a forest like Tarzan or something, even that person is learning, but he's learning by direct experience, learning by, so to speak, mistakes. That is, you learn by cause and effect. You learn by, if I do this, such and such a thing happens. If I stick my hand in the fire, I'll burn my hands. Or if I eat some wrong herb, I'm going to get poisoned and have a stomach upset. That kind of a thing. So learning by experience is by direct evaluation of your life experience, be it mental, physical, emotional, or all three levels. You are interacting with someone and the person is, let's say, not in a very good mood today, and you are interacting with the person and they get angry at you and they lash out at you, okay? And that's your experience and your perception of the other person. So you're learning by that experience also. So even though you might say you might be learning from people, you're also learning by that experience. In life, we tend to go through all kinds of experiences, doesn't matter which situation we are in. And we are learning from that as well. This is the thing where you say, learning not to repeat your mistakes, right? So learning by experience has got a different quality to it. It registers in the memory. You must understand this very carefully. Learning by experience is very strongly etched in the memory of us as multi-layered, multi-dimensional beings, because experience has got all kinds of components to it. It might be an exuberating experience. It might be a liberating experience. It might be a very emotional and loving experience. It might be a very, a dry kind of experience. There's no energy to it. So learning by experience has got a completely different quality to learning from people and learning from books. Okay? Now, the fourth and the last kind of learning is learning by intuition. Now, this is not taught in mainstream, neither is it practiced by many, and only spiritual kind of inclined people seem to be talking about intuition these days. It needs to change, obviously, because we all have an intuitive capacity inbuilt. Each one of us is born with it. And now you're learning through that your own intuition. Like, for example, you're going somewhere and your smartphone suddenly battery dies down and now you are stuck in trying to navigate to whatever place you are trying to get to. Let's say, assume a situation. You don't have GPS, you don't have Google Maps, you don't have anything. So how do you navigate, for example? You use your intuition then. The intuitive antenna that you have, your intuition antenna is turned up because you now have to rely only on yourself. You don't have anybody, no help. And something inside you says, take a left here or take a right there or go straight for some time and then take a right. You'll find your right path and you happen to land up at the right place. Who guided you there? What was the mechanism? Your knowledge, your experience, you're learning from people, none of that helped. Now you're learning through your own intuition, that faculty that we all possess which gives answers without you asking the question. You can even ask the question and it will provide you answer. You can ask a question to no one in particular and then wait for an answer to come. That's intuition. You wait for the answer to come. You don't try to answer it with your own mind. You say, how do I go about doing this? And stop and wait for the answers to come. And the answers will come. Trust me, they do. Every single time they come. But not maybe necessarily in the moment. Not necessarily maybe even in a day or a week or a month or even a couple of years. Sometimes they come after years, really. So intuition learning is very important, and we do need to cultivate this in our institutions and universities. How do you learn by your own intuition? Because this is a higher faculty which we possess, sort of the higher mind, if you will. Okay. Last but not the least, we come to the Zen form of this whole learning process. The teacher is the student, the teacher becomes the student. You will find in your learning, if you're a student or somebody who's educated, who's watching this, you will find that if you take your memory back through the memory lane, you will find that you have had some teachers who you are very fascinated by. Somebody who taught you very well some subject, and you are all of your students used to like this particular teacher because he used to teach with passion. He used to teach with such clarity and understanding that you were rapt with your attention. So somebody who can captivate all the students. And some other ones were super boring ones whom used to just sleep and doze off or sit in the last bench in the class because his teacher is very boring, that he doesn't know the subject matter, he doesn't teach clarity, he is just going through the subject matter, one after the like rote text, which has got no life in it. So this Zen saying of part of learning, the teacher is the student. When the teacher becomes the student of his own or her own subject matter, that's when the teacher becomes interesting. So the interesting teachers you have found in your life are the ones who are really into their subject, who have become themselves a student of life, a student of their subject in a constant way. They're constantly investigating. They're constantly become learning machines. Then and only then the teacher becomes really worthy of teaching others. When he himself or herself becomes the student. This needs a deeper thought, a deeper level, and it combines all the remaining four which we spoke of. One last point. Just remember that all four forms of learning that we discussed, including the fifth one, each one of us is always doing at any phase or any maturity or any age of our life. Just think about it. From the time we get up till the time we go to bed, we are either learning by people, or learning by book, or learning by experience, or intuition is working all the time. So it's not that we are learning only one form or the other. Don't get linear here. We are multi-dimensional beings, so we learn in all forms all of the time. Okay? Keep that in mind before you jump to conclusions about I learn only this way or I learn only that way. No, you are learning all the ways all the time. Okay? Take care, be safe.